let's freaking get into it. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the discovery call script and process. All right, so in this module, we're going to be breaking down the discovery call script and process. The discovery call is the first in a two-call close. Okay, so the purpose of this call, it should only be 15 to 20 minutes long. And really, the only purpose of this call is to figure out if the person is worth booking for a closing call. Now, I do just want to say this. Typically, in a high ticket closer role, it is not your responsibility to take these 15 to 20-minute discovery calls. All right, typically there's a setter on the team, and the setter is usually the one who does the prospecting and then, does the actual discovery call. However, like always, like you've seen in the whole entire course, my goal is to make you the most prepared closer possible. Because although it is highly unlikely that you'll have to take a setting call, it is not impossible. There are some coaching companies that will have their closers take both calls in a two-call close. And I see their argument for it, right? Because if you take the discovery call and the closing call, you are the person who's now building the relationship, and it increases the likelihood that you can close this person. Now, there's another scenario where maybe you get hired on with a company and they say, yes, you can work to be a closer, but we're going to start you as a setter. And you will be fully prepared, right? You'll be prepared to do the prospecting. You'll be prepared to take the discovery calls. So that's why, I just want to make sure in this course I dot all my I's and cross all my T's. All right. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and break it down. All right, so like I said, this call should only be 15 to 20 minutes long. This one will happen on a phone call, all right? It's very unlikely that discovery calls happen on Zoom. All of your closing calls should happen on Zoom or some variation of Zoom, but for the discovery, this will happen on a phone call. All right, so let's just do a quick recap of the two-call close process so you know exactly like where this call fits into the process. All right, so you have marketing, right? So your company, the company that you work for will market. That marketing will bring in a lead, okay? Then we will prospect that lead, right? So prospecting, typically as of the time of this recording, this is happening in the DMs. It can happen on a form, right? It can happen on a cold call, right? We're just trying to see like, is this lead worth our time? Is this a good lead? All right, so we deem, yes, this lead is worth our time. And we pitch a discovery call to the lead. All right. So we want to hop on a discovery call and see, furthermore, if this is a good lead and build that relationship. All right. The lead accepts the invitation and we book the call. All right. So that's one option. The other option is, it falls through, right? We don't book them for the discovery call. And if that's the case, they get moved to the lead nurture process where we nurture that lead until we repitch them to book a call again. All right. Now, as of the time of the appointment, so whenever that appointment was scheduled for, you or the individual who will be taking this call is going to call them. All right. So it's your responsibility. You're going to pick up the phone. You're going to dial. You're going to give them a call at the time of the scheduled appointment. All right. And then the discovery call is going to happen. So we're actually going to conduct the discovery call. Now, there's two possible outcomes of that discovery call. All right. We either qualify them. We deem them to be qualified and we move them to a closing call, or we disqualify them. We figure out, hey, you know what? Maybe we were wrong. Maybe this lead isn't ready. Maybe this lead is not a good fit. And then we disqualify them. And we'll talk about more like what to do with those leads. At the end of this call, I'll tell you what to do with those leads. All right. Now, if we qualify them and we move them to a closing call, we schedule in a new appointment, and that next appointment is the closing call. All right. Now, there's three possible outcomes on the closing call. We either close them, they become a client, let's go, hoorah, we did it. We don't close them, and we move them to our follow-up process, right? And we'll discuss that in a later module, or we disqualify them, right? That is still a possibility on the closing call, that for whatever reason, we unearth new information on the closing call and we deem them not a good fit. All right. So where does this fit into the process? We're going to talk about the discovery call, right? So we're going to talk about actually conducting the discovery call. So really we're on step 6 here in this two-call close process. All right. So we're going to get into the actual script in just a second. But before we do, I just want to go over the 6 different stages of the script. So the first one we have here is the rapport section. All right, personally, I do think the rapport section is important. All right, there's a lot of closing companies out there that teach closers, that sales coaching companies out there that have a different philosophy on rapport. But I'll get into that in just a second. Okay, so this is my philosophy. The goal of this section, first and foremost, you should only be spending like 90 seconds max on this section, right? If you go way too far into left field and we start talking about, they're great on Sally, and next thing we know, the 15 minutes is up and we haven't even, gotten into the actual important part of the conversation, that is a waste of time. All right. So 90 seconds is enough time to lower their guard, right? And that's the purpose of this section here, this rapport section, is just to create some rapport, lower their guard, relieve any tension that they may have, and just have a nice, lubricated transition into the conversation. All right, so that's my belief. I do think that a little bit of small talk is good. I do think that prospects now more than ever have a trust issue. And if we could just have a quick little, small talk conversation, it can alleviate a lot of that concern, a lot of that worry, and just make the rest of the conversation easy. Now, a lot of other sales coaching companies, they don't believe that. They believe that, you should pretend to be this really busy, serious guy. You pop on, hey, ready to go? And you don't even have like any rapport. And does that work? I'm sure it does. But, I personally think that that doesn't set you up for success for this call. All right. So purpose of the rapport building section is exactly that. 90 seconds max, right? If we go past 90 seconds, then yes, we're going to lose leadership, right? They're not going to view us as a leader. We're not, steering the call in the right direction, but 90 seconds is the perfect amount of time to alleviate any tension, make them feel comfortable, and then move into the call. All right. The next thing we want to do is we want to control the frame. All right. So obviously we're going to talk about how to do that, but the person asking the questions is the one who's in charge of this call. All right. Sometimes you're going to have people pop on the call. They're going to start asking questions right away. Boom, 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 boom. Right. And if you let them do that, then guess what? They're going to control the pace of the call. They're going to be the leader on the call. All right. So we want to make sure once rapport section is done, boom, we're grabbing control of the call by setting the frame. All right. We want to do it early and often. All right, once we've done that, we're going to move into a mini discovery. All right, the mini discovery has one simple purpose. All right, we're trying to figure out their current situation. So where are they at now? What are all their challenges, their struggles, things that they have tried, their current situation, the reason they're on the call. We're trying to figure that out. Okay, and then we're trying to figure out their desired situation. Where do they want to go? And we're trying to see what is the gap between their current situation and their desired situation. Is the gap close and there's really not a lot of tension that needs to be relieved, right? Or is the gap super wide and there's a lot of tension that needs to be relieved? All right. Ideally, we want a situation where the gap is wide, right? A wide gap is easier to close, all right, because there's a lot of pain there, right? So I'll give you an example. Somebody that has to lose 100 pounds, right? The gap is pretty wide, right? There's a lot of pain that needs to be relieved there, a lot of tension that needs to be relieved there because they want to solve that problem, right? But the individual that only needs to lose 5 pounds, right? The gap is as narrow as can be, right? There's not a lot of tension that needs to be relieved. So that's the goal of the mini discovery, is to figure out that gap. All right. Once we finish that, we then move into the qualify section. Okay, so the qualify section is we are asking specific questions to see if this person is worth having a closing call. So really, in section 4, the qualify section, that's where we're going to determine, all right, am I booking this person for a closing call, or am I not booking this person for a closing call? All right, if we deem that this person is qualified, we move into section 5. All right, so section 5 is simply just getting the prospect booked. All right, we just need to, on the call, get their next appointment booked. Not off the call, we're doing it together on the call to make sure it gets done. All right, once that call is booked, we move into section 6, and this is setting the stage for the next call. All right, really important to, close that loop for them, right? Because once the call is booked, they're going to start questioning like, oh my God, what is this next call? Blah, 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 right? And if we can answer that question for them, then their mind isn't going to wander. But if we don't answer that question for them, their mind wanders. Then they start saying things like, what did I get myself into? Is this a scam, right? And we just want to make sure we are leading them each step of the way. So in section 6, we set the stage on what they can expect for that next call. Okay, so that is the purpose of each section. Now we're going to go ahead and actually break down the script. All right, so we're going to start with section 1 here, rapport. All right, so time of the appointment happens. You want to call them right on the dot. All right, don't call them a minute late. Don't call them 2 minutes late. Don't call them 3 minutes late. That shit is unprofessional. All right, really unprofessional. You want to call them on the dot. So if it's a 12 p.m. appointment, right? So for example, it's 10:27 right now, right? If I had an appointment at 10:30, I'm calling them at 10:30. Sure, I may call them at 10:29, but I'm not calling them at 10:31. All right. So call them at the time of the appointment. They pick up. Hey, is this name? That's all you're going to say. Hey, is this Steve? Right? They say, yeah, it's Steve. And then you're going to say your name. You're going to say, hey, it's Chad. Right? And you can say whatever company you work for. Hey, it's Chad with Act First Closing Academy. How's your day going so far? Right? Really simple, right? 90 seconds long. We're just trying to build a little rapport. We're just trying to make it feel more comfortable. We're trying to put their mind at ease, right? They say, oh, my day's going good, right? And then very simply, my go-to is like, where are they calling in from? I would just say, like, oh, that's amazing to hear, man. Like, where are you calling in from? And let's just say they're from like Arizona, right? From here, we want to make a comment about where they live. So let's say they say Arizona. I would say, oh man, love that, bro. Like I've been to Arizona a couple of times. I actually went to a mastermind there last month. It's freaking hot there, man. It's hot. You like the heat? Right? Maybe they're like, oh yeah, I was born and raised here. And then maybe I throw in one more thing and I say like, oh, no worries, man. I get it. I live in Texas. It's hot here, but different kind of heat, right? You got the dry heat, I got the humid heat. And then I would just say, cool. Well, hey man, you ready to dive in? Like literally that would be the conversation. It's that simple. Hey, is this name? You say your name. How's your day going so far? Awesome, man. Where are you calling in from? Make a couple of comments about that, right? Go back and forth maybe 1 or 2 times. And then you just transition by saying, cool, man. Well, hey, you ready to dive in? And they say yes. All right. So that's the rapport section. Super simple. All right. Now we're getting into section 2. Okay. So section 2 is the frame. All right. So we're going to say, perfect, man. Well, hey, today's call is super easy. All right, I'm going to pause there. And as you guys know, I like to break down the sweet science of why we say what we are saying so you have a good understanding, okay? So the reason we want to say today's call is super easy is what does that do? Well, it tells them this call is easy, right? Well, once again, we're trying to alleviate any tension. We're trying to lower their guard. We're trying to lower their barrier. We're trying to make them feel comfortable. And when we say, hey, today's call is super easy, man, right? That's going to make them feel more comfortable, okay? Then we're going to say, I just want to get a gauge of your goals and your challenges and see if we can help you, right? Because that's quite literally the purpose of this call, right? We're being truthful, we're being honest, we're in integrity. That is the purpose of this call, right? Then we tell them this. We say, cool. And based on what you say, I'll provide you with some resources that I think can help, which is also true. We are going to do that. Also, if I feel like we can help you and you want to hear more about our program, then I'm going to set you up on a 60-minute Zoom consultation to chat more about the program and the details to see if it's a good fit, which is also true. So quite literally, we're just painting out the path, right? Hey, we're going to have a conversation, see if it's a good fit. If I think it's a good fit, I'll send you some resources. And, if we really think it's a good fit, I'll set you up on another call. And it's on that call that we'll talk about the program and the details. And that's a really important part that you want to say, right? Because they may get on this call and think like, hey, we're going to talk about the program today. We're going to talk about the price today. So in the control the frame section, in section 2, we want to make it very clear that if it's a good fit, we're booking them for a second call. That call will be 60 minutes long. That call will be on Zoom, and it will be that call that we talk about the program and the program details. Okay. Now, the last thing here is we want to tell them what's going to happen if it's not a good fit, right? So if we say, and if I don't think we can help you, then I'll try my best to leave you with some sort of value today. Does that sound good? All right. So here's what we're going to say. Perfect. Well, hey, man, today's call is going to be super simple. Honestly, I just want to get a gauge of your goals and your challenges and see if we can help. Based on that, I'll send you some resources. And ultimately, if I think this is a good fit, I'll set you up on a second call. Now, that second call will be a little bit longer, be 60 minutes. It will be a Zoom call as well, so we actually get to see each other's pretty faces. And it's on that call that we're going to talk about the program and the program details. Now, if at the end of today's call we don't think it's a good fit, I'll just do my best to give you some value. Does that sound fair to you? So quite literally like that. All right. So we grab control, we set the frame. Now we're moving on to section 3. We're moving, we're grooving, baby. All right. So once again, the purpose of this section, where are they at? Where do they want to be? Okay, so we want to say, awesome. Well, hey, I read your conversation with name. Now, this is going to be the prospecting conversation, so it really depends on how the company you work for does it, right? If they provide you like a pre-call application, and that's how you get the information before the call, you'll say, hey, I read your application. If it's a DM conversation with the CEO, quote unquote, the CEO or whoever they're think they're talking with, then you'll mention that person's name. So let's just assume the company you work for has a DM funnel and the prospect thinks that they're talking to the CEO. So I would say, hey, and let's say the CEO's name is Chad. Let's say it's me. Hey, I read your conversation with Chad and honestly already have a really good understanding of what you want and what you're after, but I'd love to dive deeper. So, what are the challenges that you're facing right now with your fitness or whatever the niche is that you're in, right? If you're selling for a business coaching company, you'd say business here. If you're selling for a relationship coaching company, you would say relationship, whatever the niche is, right? So, hey, read your conversation with name, already have a pretty good understanding, but I would love to dive deeper. So, what are the big challenges that you're facing right now with your fitness? All right, I'm just going to use fitness as the example here. Okay, so we want to leave that open-ended. The reason that's an open-ended conversation is we just want to see where they go with it, right? This might be, they might word vomit a little bit here, but it's okay because we'll narrow them in. So it's like a funnel. As the conversation goes, at the top it'll be really general, open-ended, and then we'll get more specific as we go. Okay, so from there, we're just going to repeat back what they said. So we're going to say, sweet. So if I'm hearing you correctly, your biggest challenges right now are blank, blank, blank. Is that right? Right? So we're just repeating back the situation. And the reason we do that is we just want ultimate clarity that we are hearing them correctly. But also additionally, it shows that we are a good listener and people love that shit. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do from there is we're going to say, cool. So if you had to pinpoint it, what do you think are your top 1 to 2 challenges surrounding your fitness or whatever it is? Okay. The only reason we're going to say this is if it wasn't specific already. All right. If it wasn't specific already in their explanation, we want to narrow it down to top 1 to 2. Now, if what they've said has already been specific, right? You can already pick out the top 1 or 2 things, then what you're going to say is you're going to say this. You're going to say, okay, and just to clarify, like your top 1 to 2 challenges with your fitness are blank or blank. Is that right or is there more? All right, so the reason we want to say is that right or is there more is obviously we want to confirm that we have their top challenges. And then we say, is that right or is there more? Because if there's more, or if we have it wrong, it opens the door and gives them an opportunity to adjust that. Okay, so that's what we're going to say there, depending on if we don't have the top 1 to 2 challenges yet versus if we do have the top 1 to 2 challenges. All right, so from there, we're going to say, got it. So blank and blank are the biggest challenges. How have those challenges impacted your fitness and your life at large? Okay, so now what we're trying to figure out is how is this affecting not only just the area that they're on the call, their fitness, their business, whatever it is, but also their life at large. And that's the important thing, right? We really are trying to figure out like, how does this affect their whole entire life? Because, fitness is one thing, business is one thing, right? But the real reason they're probably on the call is not just fitness alone, or not just business alone, or not just whatever alone. It's probably because that area, their fitness, their business, their whatever, is affecting their life as a whole, right? For example, business, they're not making enough money. Their family is feeling the effects of that. Fitness, they're overweight. That individual can't be a great husband or wife because they're overweight, right? And there is always something deeper, and that's what we're trying to figure out here. Okay. So from there, they're going to give us an answer and we're going to say, cool. So blank and blank challenges have impacted your blank in XYZ way. So we're basically just repeating what they said, right? So, all right, cool. So, lack of energy, lack of time, it's really impacted your fitness because, you're not able to go to the gym and because of that, blah, blah, right? Whatever they say, you're just going to repeat it back. And then you're going to say any other ways, or does that sum it up? Okay, so basically we're just trying to close the loop. If they say, oh yeah, it's also affecting me here, here, and here, cool, we got that information. But higher likelihood is they're going to say, nope, that's about it. And then we can close the loop on that conversation. All right, so all of these questions are going to help us unearth their current situation. So where they are at currently. Okay, now we're going to transition into where they want to go. So we're going to say, hey, really appreciate you sharing that. I feel like I have a really good understanding of your current situation. Let's go positive now. All right, what's your ultimate outcome? like, what's your goal with your fitness, right? Now, what we want is we want to guide them to some sort of specific goal, right? You guys have probably heard of SMART goals before, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, right? That's what we want to create here. Now, you don't have to like, actually write out SMART and create a SMART goal, but you just want some sort of number, something we can attach this to, and also a time frame, right? So if it's fitness, we want to know they want to lose 30 pounds in 6 months. If it's business, we want to know that they want to, 10x their revenue in however long, right? We just want some sort of specific number here, okay? And that's going to help us understand their desired outcome. Where do they want to go? All right. We're gonna say, hey, love that goal. Now, how would accomplishing that goal, how would that impact your business and your life overall? Right. So same thing, trying to see like, okay, reaching this goal, what is that going to do for the greater good of your life? And then we're going to repeat back what they said. Okay, cool. So achieving goal would impact blank and blank way. Any other ways, or does that sum it up? Same thing, trying to close the loop on that conversation. All right. So that's our mini discovery. That's figuring out current situation and desired situation. All right, now we move on to section 4. So section 4, once again, is this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we're really figuring out, are we going to book this person for a closing call, or are they going to get the axe? Okay, so we transition into the qualifying section by saying this. We're going to say, amazing. Based on what you told me so far, I feel really confident that I have some resources that can help you. I'll send those over after our call today, which you actually will. Truthfully, the resources will help, but they won't be the fix all, right? So what we're doing now is, we kind of promise these free resources, right? But now we're trying to set the frame and set the mindset that those resources are great, but what they really need is your program. All right. So we're going to say, truthfully, the resources will help, but they won't be the fix all. Customized strategy, accountability, and consistency long term is going to be. If we end up scheduling in a second call, I can cover more specifically how XYZ program helps our clients overcome the same challenge they said to reach the same goal that they set. I just have a couple more questions before we discuss the potential of a second call. Does that sound good to you? So once again, we're setting that frame, right? We're putting in that hook of like, hey, the program is the solution. But then we also, we kind of do a little bit of a takeaway, right? We're not just saying like, hey, let's get on that second call now, right? We're showing that it has to actually be a good fit. And we do that by saying like, before we even discuss the possibility of a second call, I have a couple more questions for you. All right. So they say yes. Now, these are the questions that are going to help you determine if it's a good fit or not. All right. So the first like couple of questions here are more softball questions. These are a little bit easier. And the reason we do that is we don't want to like hit them with our hardest questions right off the bat, because what's that going to do? It's going to put that wall up, right? So we're continuing to chip away at the wall that the prospect has so they can feel comfortable answering harder questions that you ask. Okay. So the first one is, how long have you been following our content? So super simple. Does this really matter that much? Not really. Obviously, like the longer they've been following the company you work for, in theory, they should trust you more, but really it's just an easy opening question. Okay. Then we're going to say, how long have you been trying or thinking about accomplishing this goal? Right. So this does help you, right? Because if they've been thinking about accomplishing this goal for a while and they haven't, right? Or if they've been trying to accomplish this goal for a while and they haven't, guess what that's going to do? It's going to cause that the gap between where they are and where they want to be is even wider. There's a lot more tension that they need to get this problem solved, which is good. Okay. So the higher that is, the better quality lead you have. All right. If it's like, it's kind of like this whole new thing. I don't know. I don't even know if I want to do it. Right. If it's that kind of vibe, now you're starting to think like, okay, is this a good fit? Is this not a good fit? All right, so the next question is, how important is it for you to accomplish goal? 1, you don't care, and 10, I need to accomplish this goal like yesterday, right? So 1 is they have no desire at all. 10 is like, shit, I should have got this done yesterday, right? Now, I would only accept 8, 9s, or 10s here, okay? So if they say an 8, 9, or 10, we're moving forward. If they say anything less than an 8, I'm disqualifying them, okay? Now, the next thing here is, do you feel that you're in a place in your life mentally and physically where you're ready to commit to reaching a goal like this, right? So we want to make sure, is this person in a place where they're like even ready to start working on this goal, mentally and also physically. Okay. So if they say no there, obviously that is a disqualification. If they say yes, we're going to continue to proceed. All right. So this is the financial question. You want to save this for close to last because, like I said, each question as we ask them more questions, they're gonna get a little bit more personal, a little bit more personal, a little bit more like, I don't feel comfortable answering that. But because we've done a good job of, chipping away at their invisible antitrust wall, they should be more open to answering a question like this. Okay, so we say on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being things are really, really tight right now, and 10 being I have the resources to do whatever I want. Where do you feel like you're at financially? Okay. So there is a lot of discrepancy here because people perceive money differently, right? Like they might say they're a 1, but it's just like how they operate, right? Like they might have a lot in the bank, but they're just kind of, I don't want to say cheap, but they're a little bit more strict with their budget, right? So that's why no matter what they say, if they say a 10 or a 1, we want to ask them like, what does that number mean to them, right? And then we're also going to say like, could you think of anyone that would have to be involved in this particular financial decision to move forward, or could you make that decision on your own? So first, let's break this one down. What does that number mean to you, right? We're just trying to get a better understanding of like their situation. Like, are they broke as a joke? Or do they have some money, right? We're just trying to figure that out. Okay. Obviously, that's going to determine if we move them forward or not. Now, the next one here, we're trying to see like, does anyone else have to be involved in this decision? If it's like a wife or a husband, right? We're probably going to invite them into the next call just so that we could be there to make that decision together. Sorry. I had to drink some water there. All right. So the last qualifying question we're going to ask is in terms of bandwidth, the minimum time per week to be successful in our program is blank to blank hours. Do you feel confident you can commit to that? So obviously you'll have to get that information from your CEO or from whoever manages you directly. But what we're doing here is we're just trying to tie down that like time is not going to be a concern. All right. So that's the qualifying section. So if they get through all of that, now we can move them into the we feel like we can help you. Let's get this next call booked section. All right. So we're going to say, cool. Like I mentioned before, I have some resources that I think can really help, and I'll send those over after today's call. I also 100% think that XYZ program can help you accomplish this goal, and I would love to invite you into the next step of the application process. Would you like to hear what those next steps are? Okay. Let me turn the fan on. It's getting hot in here. My office has floor to ceiling windows, and the sun in the winter like shines directly in here, so it gets like hot as shit. Okay, cool. So, lost my train of thought for a second. Yes, so the last question here, would you like to hear next steps? We're just trying to get their buy-in, right? We're trying to get their buy-in that like, yes, I do want to hear next steps, which is just their buy-in to continuing down this process. So they say yes. Then we just explain what those next steps are. So we say, cool. So the next step in the process is for you to set up for you and I, or if you are doing a setting call for another closer, right? You would say, you would mention that closer, right? For you and a closer. But if you are the person who's taking this next call, you would say you and I, right? So for the next step in the process is for you and I, I'm just going to say you and I for this example, to set up a 60-minute Zoom call. Now, on this call, we're going to come up with a game plan for you. We'll talk about the program and the details. We'll talk about the investment. And if it's a good fit, we'll just onboard you right on the call. So you're just going through the steps of like, hey, this is what they can expect on the call. If it's not a good fit, then at least you'll have some resources to get started. Does that sound good to you? All right. Once again, trying to get their buy-in. Every small little yes as we're moving them closer to the pitch is getting them more and more bought in. All right. So they say yes to that. All right. Very simply, we're just going to pitch times for the next day. Great. Well, hey, my next availability is tomorrow at blank or blank time. What's best for you? Present them 2 options. Next day, 24-hour turnaround time. You guys know why that's important. Get them to book a call as soon as possible. Okay. So that's the goal here. So if they can't do those times, pick the next 2 times that are your soonest availability. Okay. Once you guys agree on times, you're going to say, awesome. and you're going to book them right then and there. So enter in the information, book them right then and there. You're going to say, awesome, I just booked your call with the same email and phone number you already provided, assuming that those are the right ones. You can even ask them that. Can you check your email to see if you got the calendar invite? All right, so book them right then and there. You can use the same phone number and email. Obviously, you can ask them if those are the ones that they want to use, but assuming it's probably a yes. And then from there, once you send the calendar invite, have them confirm that that calendar invite did show up for them, whether that's their email or directly on their calendar. We just want confirmation it's there. Because if it's not there, right, there's a higher likelihood that they don't show. All right. So they say yes. You say, great. Would you mind accepting it now so I don't end up double booking you? And then just get them to confirm the appointment right then and there. All right. Then from there, we're going to say thank you. So the Zoom link for your call is in that calendar invite already. Please make sure you show up on time in a spot that you can pay attention and on a computer so we can best see everything I have to show you. Any questions for me at this point? So now we're starting to set the frame, right? We're trying to say, show up on time, be in a spot you can pay attention, and it's best if you're on a computer because I have things I'm going to want to show you. And what that is when well, you don't know this yet, but when you go to present the offer, you're going to want to share your screen and actually like show them parts of the program. And if you do that on a phone, the screen is so small, right? So it's best to make sure that they are on a computer. Okay. Any questions at this point? If they say no, you're going to say, sweet. Well, hey, I look forward to chatting with you on blank date and blank time. All right. From there, you'll end the call. And then once the call is done, this is where you want to fulfill on your promises. This is where you want to send them those resources. Okay. Now, I would get those resources from your CEO, or if the company you work for has a coach manager, right? Somebody who would know like what the right resources are for the challenges that were discussed on your call. But once the call ends, I would shoot them a text, thank them for their time, say you're pumped for the next call, and then say, hey, here are the resources I provided. What does that do? It shows that you guys follow through on what you say you're going to do. What does that do? Sets you up for success because now they think, if the closer's doing this, if the sales rep's doing this, then I can only imagine what the coaches are going to do, right? Coaches following through on their word as well. Now, if you have to deny somebody at any time, if you just realize it's not a good fit, it's very similar to how you would deny somebody in the DMs. So basically, you're just going to invite them to your community, the company's free community. So I would say, hey, really appreciate our time today, Name. Unfortunately, I don't think that XYZ program is going to be a good fit for you right now, just because of XYZ reason. However, we don't believe in burning bridges here. And honestly, it could be a good fit down the road. So in the meantime, I'd love to invite you to our company's free community. This is where we have other XYZ ideal clients looking to accomplish XYZ goal. Does that sound like it would be something that's helpful for you? Amazing. All right, let me send it over to you. And then you send it over to them. Okay. All right, y'all. So that's everything you need to learn about the discovery script